Hi. Originally I was going to write down all the things that I had suffered leading up to my psoriatic arthritis diagnosis, but I thought maybe in hindsight it would be better to put them into a video, and so it's something you can watch and maybe learn from, and hopefully not have to wait so long for a diagnosis like I did. So going right back to the early 70s, when I was about 19, 20 years old, I noticed that in my hair I was getting some dry skin in my scalp, and I was a bit worried because back then in the 70s long hair was the fashion, and to be honest my hair was my pride and joy, and I was really worried that I might have to get my hair cut off, so off I went to the doctors to find out what it was. The doctors told me it was psoriasis, which is something I'd never heard of, but we didn't have the internet in those days, so he showed me some medical books of what psoriasis is, how bad it could get, and he said to me that that's not necessarily the case, that everyone gets it really bad, but it is something that you have got all the time. There is no cure for psoriasis, only treatments that sort of keep it at bay. He also said it may seem to go for a while and you think you've got rid of it, but generally it will probably come back. So really the outlook wasn't that good. So I got married when I was 20, and just after I got married, a little while after, I noticed that my skin condition was getting quite a bit worse. In fact, so bad that it was literally from head to foot. I could brush off the sort of skin and literally peel it off in sort of large pieces. I used to go to the gym, but I stopped going to the gym as my skin condition got worse, because obviously the embarrassment of having this bad skin, people looking at you, and you're really worried about what they're thinking, and that they think it may be catching. Also during that time I started to get some pains in my feet. I walked to work because I didn't have a car, and I spent about 5 hours a day walking around, obviously on my feet, and I started to get some really bad pains. It was like walking on marbles a lot of the time. So I went to the doctors, and he didn't really know what it was, but he did say that maybe it's just badly fitting shoes, maybe you need to get some better shoes, which I did, because he said that walking on mezzanine flooring, which I was doing most of the day, might be the problem. But these shoes made no difference, and I even ended up getting a larger size shoe so I could put some foam and cushion sort of padding in the shoe to help relieve the pressure on the balls of my feet. But really that didn't make too much difference, and to be honest it's something I lived with for a few years on and off, and when it was really bad I just took painkillers to ease the pain. So now I'm sort of getting on to about 28 years old, and I have one child. Now at that time also I got made redundant and didn't have a job, but a friend of mine who had a window cleaning business said to me, why don't you come out window cleaning with me and we see if we can sort you out around. Yeah, I started window cleaning, and within a short time I did have my own round, working on my own, and it was quite nice. It wasn't too long, maybe a couple of years into my time working as a window cleaner, I started to get really bad trouble with my knees, and also I started to experience problems in my elbow, probably tennis elbow at the time, and that was getting painful as well, probably all the squeegee work. Things got so bad that I would go out some days and then come home early. Some days I wouldn't go out at all, other days I'd do less and less, and eventually it got so bad that I had to give up my window cleaning round altogether, because I could barely get up 1 or 2 rungs of the ladder, and some days I'd have a problem even getting out the chair. My knees hurt so much and were so weak. If the phone went, I couldn't get up to answer it in time. I went to the doctors, and he said my knee joints were worn out, and that by the time I was 50 I would have to have knee replacements. Well, 50 was the youngest they would do knee replacements back then. So I sold my window cleaning round, and basically I was off work for around about 4 years, on and off. The pain was on and off. And all the time I was living on ibuprofen tablets when the pain got really bad. Also during that time, in that 4-year period, I got divorced as well, so that didn't help with my issues because now I was living on my own. During one of the visits to the doctors, one of them suggested that I take up gentle cycling because this would help strengthen the muscles around my knee joints and would help with the pain. So I did do that. In actual fact, I quite liked the cycling and it did help my knees. And I got more and more into cycling and started doing a bit more competitive cycling, being sort of a competitive sort of person that I am. But a little while into sort of increasing my mileage on the bike and doing this kind of cycling, I noticed I started getting problems with my ankles. And some days they really hurt. Really hurt. So off I went to the doctors and he diagnosed a heel spur, Achilles tendonitis and plantar fasciitis, which I think is how you pronounce it. Also, during the x-rays, he showed me on my left heel that I had some arthritis in the heel, back of my heel, and in 2 of my toes. Also, during that time, they did an examination of how I stood and how I walked, and they said that my arches had dropped in like that, and that meant that my Achilles tendons were like this at the back of my heel or not straight, and they decided that that was causing the pain. I mean, the pain was so bad some days that my ankles at some point, at some period, seemed to just lock up and I could only walk on even ground. Anything that was slightly uneven or slightly bumpy, if my ankles twisted, it was really painful. By saying that I needed to sort of correct my posture, the way I walked, they made me some inner soles that fitted in my shoes, which straightened my feet up. So I walked straight, so then my tendons would be straight. So that, in effect, would help my Achilles tendonitis. I was also offered at the time an operation on my tendons because, particularly my left foot, I could only walk literally on tiptoe. I couldn't straighten my foot right down. It's almost like my tendons had tightened up and I couldn't straighten my foot up, and that was really painful. And they said the operation would relieve that, but if I had the operation, I wouldn't be able to do any competitive cycling because obviously there will be a sort of weakness in that area. So I declined that operation because I wanted to carry on cycling. And I did carry on cycling all this time. I was still cycling about 200 miles a week. But to do this, I was basically living on painkillers. By then I was prescribed more ibuprofen, and this time they were 600 milligram tablets. And I was taking 2 600 milligram tablets 3 times a day, so 6 tablets a day to get rid of the pain. And quite honestly, they were so strong I could have literally cut my foot off and I wouldn't even have realised. Now, this went on for quite a few years. And during this time I started having trouble with my eyes. Really bad, sore, gritty eyes, really painful, couldn't stand the light, couldn't stand looking at anything that was bright. Any bright light would be severe pain. And again, I went to the doctors, they sent me to the hospital, and the hospital diagnosed me as having a corneal ulcer. Again, in my left eye, I seem to remember. I had various treatments for it, and it will go away, and then maybe 6 months later it will come back. So this went on for 2 or 3 years, but that's something I don't get anymore. But they did hint at some point that it could be linked to a virus or sometimes linked to rheumatism, but really that wasn't sort of pursued anymore. Over the next few years, my psoriasis was a lot better. I've been trying to get out in the sun a lot more because sun is quite good for it. My pains in my ankles started to diminish, my knees were a lot better, and things were looking up. And by now I'm sort of getting on for 45, 46 years old. I'm back at work, this time working in the office. I've got a new partner, And she had no concerns about my psoriasis because basically it was 90% better. I had no real pain issues and things were relatively fine. We had a child as well together and things were okay. Just a few age-related aches and pains here and there. And this really went on for a long time, about 10 years, when I never really had any problem. Also, during that time, if you look, my psoriasis has virtually gone. Actual fact, you would never know I had psoriasis at all. A couple of little marks here and there, but as you can see, completely free, or almost completely free. Now in 2010, I got made redundant from the bank that I worked at, and I started having issues with my eyes again. This time, it wasn't corneal ulcers, it was to do with migraines. And having spoken to my optician, they diagnosed visual migraines, where you get this zigzaggy sort of aura around your vision, and sometimes you get like blank areas in your vision where someone looks like, if you're reading, looks like someone's rubbed out a couple of letters. This usually, when it happens, goes on for 20 minutes. Literally, you could time your clock by it, then it will go away, and you could possibly have a sort of quite a bad headache for a day or two afterwards. And this is something I still get. Now, whether this is related to inflammation, I don't know, but I just thought I'd put that in. I carried on keeping fit, I carried on cycling to work for a long time with no real issues. Then in 2016, we went to Australia. And during the long haul flight, my left foot swelled up really badly. It felt like my trainers were literally crushing my foot. And to be honest, I could not wait to get off the plane. When I had a look, it turned out not to be my whole foot, it turned out just to be one toe that was causing the problem. But it was so bad that I thought it may be a couple of days, it will go down, maybe it was to do with the air pressure in the plane. Some people get swollen ankles, but it didn't go away and it was really painful. I could barely walk, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't bear anything touching it, so I went to the doctors over there and he diagnosed gout. Gave me some anti-inflammatories, which I didn't take because they gave me heart palpitations, and basically the 4-week holiday was ruined because I couldn't hardly walk anywhere, it was painful, it was just uncomfortable, and I couldn't wait to get home. Now when I came home, obviously the first thing I did was to go to the doctors, and the doctor there, along with another sort of a second opinion, they diagnosed dactylitis, which as we well know these days is called sausage toe. And then I got referred to a rheumatologist who asked me about my history. So I related all the aches and pains I've had over the years, and the penny dropped. Psoriatic arthritis at 63 years of age, 43 years after the skin disease psoriasis first showed itself. Finally, an answer to all those problems I'd had over all these years. And in fact, I had had virtually all of the symptoms, one after the other, leading up to this disease. Yet no one linked it with the skin problem psoriasis. This is when I decided to create this group, because probably like most people with psoriasis or rheumatoid arthritis, methotrexate is the first course of treatment. And before committing to the program, I'm an inquiring sort of person, and I don't like just doing something because someone tells me to or because everyone else is doing it. So I decided to research this drug myself, and I was really surprised to find how dangerous methotrexate could be. But my ankles, my Achilles tendonitis and my plantar fasciitis had returned as well, and it was so bad I was thinking of packing in my job, because I had another job where I was walking around about 5 hours a day, and some days it's unbearable. I just couldn't hardly put my foot or heel on the ground. Couldn't wait to get home and put a packet of frozen peas on my joint just to ease the pain. I also started to get really bad heartburn, and the doctor obviously was a bit concerned, so they sent me for an endoscopy where they put a camera down into your stomach and have a look to see what's going on. And I was diagnosed with gastritis, which, you guessed it, is another inflammatory issue. Now whether that's attached to psoriasis or anything else, I don't know, but It is an inflammatory problem. But again, now I get that. I don't get that anymore. I've always been pretty fit and body aware. And in my later years, for a long time, I didn't take any medication unless absolutely essential. I have a good low heart rate. I have excellent blood pressure, low body weight and good cholesterol. And generally I've looked after myself, but I was faced with this decision. Take a drug that may help my condition, and it's no guarantee that it will, but which may give me other irreversible or dangerous health sort of conditions or situations later on down the road, or put up with my disease and try to reduce the inflammation myself, being aware that there could be slightly other higher risk factors if this disease is left untreated. I decided on the latter based on the fact that I had lived with this for over 40 years with no real seemingly permanent problems once the various pains have gone away or just moved on to another area. My rheumatologist had stopped treating me because of my decision, because obviously I'm not having the treatment that they offered. I was doing a physical job at the time. I cycled many miles each week and sometimes still do. I'm a lot fitter now as a 67-year-old than many of my own age. I still ride my motorbikes, and there is nothing I can't do now that I was doing in my 20s. The rest you may already know. I hit my inflammation hard, trying to cut down on inflammatory foods and trying to eat as many anti-inflammatory foods and taking a few supplements known for their anti-inflammatory properties. Within 3 months, the pain started to go away, and I've been pain-free and medication-free for well over 4 years now. A check-up about a year ago indicated that my CRP, my C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation, was down from 30 down to 11. So according to my GP, that now meant that I did not have clinical inflammation. Well, that was right up until last month or so when I damaged the index finger on my right hand. I got a deep cut right across the first knuckle, the first part of my finger. And I thought nothing of it until it started to swell up. And I thought, well, I've got an infection and that will soon sort itself out and go away. But I was wrong. My immune system obviously kicked in, and like it does in other instances of arthritis, it didn't know when to stop. And my dactylitis is back. I'll just show you. There's my finger. There it is compared to the other one. See, it's quite a bit fatter. Okay. Am I worried though? Well, not really. It can be very painful sometimes, but I know, and I know the pattern of my disease, that this, like all my other joint problems, will go away in time. Now it might take a month, it might take 6 months, if I keep to my diet and look after myself. Worth risking methotrexate for? Well, for me, not really in my situation, because I consider myself lucky. I only seem to get the pains in one joint at a time. Of course, you may be different, and what you do and what you take is up to you. So what can we take from all of this and this information that I've tried to give you? Well, one, and very importantly, if you have psoriasis and start getting any of the things that I had, get checked out early and mention the link with the skin disease psoriasis to your GP if you have psoriasis with these diseases, with these other issues, because it will be quite likely, like me, your GP will just treat this as a separate issue. Don't wait 40 years for a diagnosis like me. 2, don't underestimate the benefits of a good diet, especially an anti-inflammatory one. If you have an autoimmune disease, or even if you haven't got an autoimmune disease, an anti-inflammatory diet is always good to have, because 85 to 90% of the serious diseases that people suffer these days are because of inflammation. I ate all of the junk food back in my time and would never have admitted that what you eat affects your health further down the line. I've gone from the biggest critic to the biggest advocate of an anti-inflammatory and a healthy diet. 3. Try to do some exercise and keep your weight down, and give up smoking if you smoke at present, especially important as anti-inflammatory diseases carry a slightly higher cardiac risk, especially if you have other comorbidities like high blood pressure and cholesterol. By the way, I was a heavy smoker from 16 years of age to 28 years of age, smoking 40 a day when I gave up. And get a blood pressure monitor of your own. This is one basic way you can keep an eye on how things are working inside. And very important, number 4, do your own research when offered medication. What the risks are. All medications, even a paracetamol, carry some risk of side effects, and balance those risks out in relation to your own personal situation, as the medical profession will only tell you things they want you to know, and they don't often tell you the whole situation, just as in my case with the methotrexate, where I was only told about the mild side effects. No one can tell you what to take or what not to take. It's your body and you can decide what you do. But I'm pretty convinced that if you do some proper, serious research, you will be better informed about the side effects of a particular drug than the average GP. Try to look after yourself generally and keep stress-free. Looking back, most of my flare-ups seem to be a reaction to a situation. I got thrown out at home at 18, and my psoriasis, the skin part of my psoriasis, started around 18 to 19 years of age. The skin condition got worse after getting married. Not saying that there's anything wrong with being married, but maybe the stress of the marriage and the different lifestyle caused me some kind of stress. My knee and joint problems started after I got made redundant and started doing a lot more ladder work, putting my joints under stress. My feet and ankle issues started after lots of hard cycling. My latest bout of dactylitis was brought on by a deep cut to the knuckle, and so on. Maybe we just react badly to life stresses and situations and suffer for it, who knows? But whatever it is, make your own decisions, be happy with what choices you've made, and get on with your life. Because there's always someone out there worse off than you. So hopefully you found this interesting. Hopefully it will help you to look at your own situation and maybe realise that maybe some of the things you're suffering now are to do with your inflammation issues. And good luck with whatever you choose to do.